All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rajendra Singh Bisht, and I'm the product head and chief mentor of GK for Endeavor Careers. In today's lecture, I shall be talking to you about two broad themes. So, I have divided today's lecture into two parts. So, in part one, we are going to talk about a general preparation strategy about how to prepare GK for MBA entrance examinations. And in part second, we are going to look at one important topic for this year's examination, which is current affairs for the month of August. So let us begin with our first part, which is how to prepare GK for MBA entrance examinations. Alright guys, so from the point of view of GK preparation, I am dividing management entrance examinations into two different categories. So in category 1 are exams like CAT, NMAT, SNAP and Maharashtra CET. These are the examinations where there is no GK in first stage, or there is no GK in the written stage. Alright, as far SNAP is concerned, SNAP used to have a GK section till 2018, and that section was called Current Affairs. But there is no current affairs section in SNAP 2019. SNAP had removed that section last year, and going by the same trend, it is expected that there will be no GK section, or there will be no current affairs section in this year's SNAP also. So I'm including SNAP in category number 1 of the examinations with no GK. While the second category is the examination where GK is also a section in stage 1 or in the written stage. So some of the prominent such examination where GK is also asked in written part are IIFT, ZET, TIS, IRMA and CMAT. So these are the 5 major examinations. Now as far the individual examination is concerned, these are the relative weightages of GK section in these exams. Alright, for IIFT, 10% of the total paper is GK. So there are 20 GK questions out of the total 110 questions in IIFT, and each GK question is 1.5 marks. Unlike the other sections in IIFT where every question carries 3 marks, GK question carries 1.5 marks. So 20 questions total, 1.5 marks each question, takes the total weightage of GK section in IIFT to be 10%. Then other exams like ZET, CMAT and MyCat. These are the examinations where GK is almost 1/4 of the total paper. Alright. Then for IRMA set, 60 questions out of total 200 will require you to have a general awareness of the country, of the society, which is also a domain of GK. Then comes TIS. In TIS, GK plays a major role. So you can see that for TISnet, 40%, that is 40 question out of the total 100 will be based on GK. And interestingly, in TISnet, GK is the only section with a sectional cutoff. And if you are aiming for HRM and LR or organizational development and change leadership course in TIS, you will have to write a TISmat also, and TISmat will be 50% GK. So these are the relative weightages of GK in different examinations. I'm sure that this last column is sufficient to convince you about the importance of preparing GK for different management entrance examination. So those of you who are writing any of these examinations, IIFT, ZET, TIS, IRMA and CMAT, please do not ignore GK, because that will prove a game changer. Alright, so this is about different examinations where GK plays an important role. Now taking it further, looking at important areas within GK. GK can be broadly divided into two parts when it comes to management entrance examinations. So one part is current affairs, another part is static GK. If I talk about the relative importance of these two areas, so almost 60 to 70% of your questions will be based on current affairs, and the balance 30 to 40% will be static GK. So in that sense, current affairs plays a greater importance, current affairs has a greater role in GK section in MBA examinations. Alright. Okay, so a word of caution here. The percentages that I have given you, 60 to 70% for current affairs and 30 to 40% for static GK. So these percentages that I have given to you is the general, this is generally true about all the examinations. Goes without saying that from one examination to another examination and from one year to another year, these ratios may change. Alright, just to cite one example, in CMET exam, so those of you who are also planning to write CMET, please be careful that in CMET examination, this ratio is exactly reversed. So in CMET examination, static GK will be 60 to 70%, while current affairs will be only 30 to 40%. So in CMET, this ratio completely reverses. Alright. So what I'm giving you, what I'm telling you right now is not exam specific things. Right now I'm covering GK as a whole, GK in general about all the examinations. Alright. So about each particular exam, we'll talk about it at a later stage. Right now I'm giving you only a bird's eye view of GK for different MBA examinations. Alright, now going even deeper, which are the important areas within current affairs and which are the important areas within static GK? So these are the important areas in current affairs: business awareness, awards and recognitions, newsmakers, national events, international events, and so on. Alright, so these are important areas. Most important area is business awareness. So business awareness is the most important area, and by business awareness I mean the news from the field of economy, news from the field of business and corporate world, news like new appointments, major policy changes, mergers and acquisitions, new deals signed, new agreement reached, new brands launched, new brand ambassadors and new ad campaigns started, and so on. So this comprised of business awareness. Then important awards announced in last 1 year. In newsmakers will come all those people and all those places which were in news in last 1 year. So that will be a part of newsmakers. Then important national events and important international events, including the national as well as international controversies. And last but not the least is sports. Every year there are 2 to 3 questions based on sports in different examinations, so please do not ignore sports. Okay, so these are the important current affairs topics that you must keep in mind when you are reading newspapers or when you are reading news magazines. Alright, as far as static GK is concerned, these are the important areas. So basic concepts of economics, basics of India's constitution and India's geography and history will be helpful. Alright, an important area is important organization. Important international organizations always have a question about them in IFT examination and in other examinations also. So important international organizations like World Bank, IMF, WTO, WHO this year. WHO has become very important, especially because of the role it had played, or probably the role that it had not played in containing coronavirus. So you can expect a question on WHO. So important organizations, there is always a question or couple of questions related to important organizations. So these are important current affair areas and these are important static GK areas. I want you to have another look on all these themes, because these are the themes that you must keep in your mind while you are preparing GK. Different themes in current affairs and different theme in static GK. So I'm giving you a couple of seconds to go through the screen once again. Alright, so after having looked at important areas, the next logical step or the next logical question is, which are the sources, which is the material that we must follow for preparing these areas. So here I will go first about current affairs and then about static GK. So which are the important sources that we must follow for current affairs will be covered first. And in current affairs, newspapers and news magazines are the most important source of preparing current affairs. All right. Okay, so in newspaper, this is a list of newspaper. This is a suggested list of newspapers. So I have divided newspapers into two categories. One is general purpose newspapers and second is business newspapers. Okay. So I have given 3 recommendations in both the categories. So 3 general purpose newspapers, which are Hindu, Indian Express and Statesman, and then 3 business newspapers, which are Business Standard, Mint and Economic Times. So in an ideal situation, you should pick up one newspaper from each category and spend almost 40 minutes to 45 minutes on that newspaper, which means in ideal situation you should read 2 newspapers daily for almost 1.5 hours to 2 hours. Correct? But because the world is not ideal and the situation is also not ideal, so I would suggest that if you do not have the habit of reading newspapers, or if you do not find sufficient time, my suggestion is that pick up at least one newspaper out of these 6. Pick up any one newspaper out of these 6 and read that newspaper for 40 to 45 minutes daily. This will be helpful not only in making you aware of the current events, but it will also help you in your language abilities, in your vocabulary, in your grammar, in your language use. But those of you who are very hard pressed for time and they do not either have an aptitude or time for reading newspapers, to them I would suggest to go for news magazines. News magazines are basically a compilation of all the news, generally at a frequency of per month. So these magazines come monthly and they compile all the major news from the last month. Right, so you can take up these monthly magazines also. That will save you the time from reading newspaper daily, though I would recommend doing both of them simultaneously, reading newspapers as well as reading news magazines. But if you have to choose any one of them, my suggestion is to go with news magazines. I am recommending some of these news magazines. Alright, so in row number 1 I have given the names of 3 good quality news magazines. You can pick up any one of them. Competition in Focus, this is by Arihant Publication, then Pratyogita Darpan and Competition Success Review. Alright, then weekly magazines, The Week and Frontline, in case you want to read about any particular topic in depth. Otherwise these are not recommended. Only if you want to read something or some topic in depth, you can refer to these magazines, otherwise you can avoid them. Similarly, if you want to read something in depth, or if you want to check the cover stories of these, the Economist or the Bloomberg or the Business India, you can do that also. You do not have to read these magazines, Economist, Bloomberg and Business India, cover to cover. Please do not read them cover to cover unless you are genuinely interested in reading them. Alright, and the last set of magazines that I have mentioned, these are specifically for those students who will be writing TIS and IRMA. Only the student of TIS and IRMA, they should refer to these magazines, because these 3 magazines that I have mentioned at the end of this slide have a very strong rural bent. Rural. In fact, PARI is the short form for People Alliance for Rural India. So only if you are interested in rural management, or if you are writing TIS or IRMA, you should refer to these magazines. Otherwise you can conveniently ignore these magazines. So I hope I am clear about newspapers and news magazines and how to use them, who should use them and when. Alright, any doubts connected to this? Use the Telegram group, link for which is given in the description. Use that link, message me. I will address your doubt. May take some time, may take couple of days depending upon my engagements, but I'll respond to them. Alright, so after newspapers and news magazines, because the whole world has gone digital, so let us look at some news websites and news apps. Good quality news websites are Jagran, Josh and GK Today. Alright, here you can find out daily news as well as lot of practice current affairs questions. So if you want to practice questions, both Jagran, Josh as well as GK Today presents daily practice questions, weekly practice questions, lot of practice questions. Other than that, you can also use Affairs Cloud, you can use India Bix, you can use lot of other resources available on internet, but these two are the tested ones, both for reading news as well as practicing questions. About apps, I would suggest to use some of these apps. Google Newsstand, which is once again a daily compilation of news. Then InShorts, Nepali, Daily Hunt. So InShorts, Nepali and Daily Hunt, just like Google Newsstand, are the news aggregator. Alright. OpenDiction is slightly different because OpenDiction has a focus on editorials and op-eds, open editorial articles. So for reading editorials and other articles, you can use OpenDiction, and for reading factual news, you can use InShorts or Nepali or Daily Hunt. Okay, then there are a lot of useful Telegram groups. You can join them also, including Endeavor's Telegram group. Alright, so these are different sources. Along with that, let me tell you what are some of the offerings by Endeavor Careers when it comes to current affairs. We also churn out a lot of information, lot of material related to current affairs every month. So that includes current affairs lectures, like the one you are going to have in 5 minutes from now. Then we have current affair handouts and notes. We also have current affair videos, which we regularly post on our YouTube channel. Alright, so we have a playlist created by the name GK Video Series. It will be helpful if you check this video series. You can do that once this lecture concludes. Go onto our YouTube channel, check the GK Video Series. The playlist has a lot of useful videos for your current affairs. Alright. Okay, so these are the study sources that you must follow for current affairs, and these are some of the current affair offerings by Endeavor Careers. Moving on to static GK. In static GK, I would recommend that you should purchase at least one good quality static GK book. Purchase a book or a manual, one and the same thing. So get a good quality GK book. My recommendations are these four. All four of them are good. These are by 4 different publication houses, so you can pick up any one which suits you, but all 4 of them are good. So Pearson's GK manual. Okay, this is McGraw-Hill, so this H is by mistake. This is McGraw-Hill General Studies, Arihant's General Knowledge, or Lucent's General Knowledge. You can pick up any one of these books. All these 4 books contain entire static GK. So it contains everything, including economics, including geography, including constitution, including international organizations. Everything will be included. Alright, so you can purchase a book either from your nearest bookstore or online and start reading it topic wise. So pick up one topic, say for example start with economics and then complete economics before moving on to the next topic. Alright, so this is how you should cover static GK. Now, just like I told you about current affairs, we produce material on static GK also at Endeavors. So we have static GK lectures, like the live lectures as well as the recorded lectures. Then we have static GK handouts and notes, and also static GK videos. But these videos, unlike the current affair videos, are not available on YouTube. These videos are available on Endeavor's portal. Right? In fact, these notes and these videos both are available on Endeavor's portal, access to which you will get once you enroll for our courses. You can get access to these handouts and these videos. Alright, they will also be useful in your GK preparation. Alright. Okay, along with that, we also provide you we also provide you a complete test series for all the examinations mentioned earlier. IFT, IRMA, ZET, TEST, CMET, all the examinations. So we have test series including the GK test for all of those exams. So these are some of the sources that you must follow. Alright, so after this, after telling you about the importance of GK, number one, after telling you about the study sources that you must follow, number two, and after telling you about endeavors offering, number three, let us now start with our current affairs lecture. Let us pick up one topic. I told you current affairs is the most important topic in MBA entrance examinations. So I will pick up current affairs and I will choose 1 month, which is last month, and we will cover the current affairs of August 2020. Alright guys, so let us start looking at the major current affair events from the last month, which is August 2020. The first category that we are going to look at is days and dates. So we are going to look at 6 important days observed in the month of August, and we are beginning with a tragic one on 6th August. This is Hiroshima Day. Hiroshima Day is observed on 6th August, and this year's Hiroshima Day is particularly very tragic because 2020 is the 75th anniversary of the atomic attack on Japanese city of Hiroshima. During Second World War, USA dropped 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing approximately 5 lakh people. So these are the names of those bombs. Ironically, the bombs were named Little Boy and Fat Man. The bombs which caused huge devastation in the 2 major Japanese cities were named Little Boy and Fat Man. Look at the dates. This is 6th August and 9th August 1945. And these 2 atomic acts finally forced Japan to surrender during Second World War, and the announcement of the final surrender of Japan in Second World War incidentally came on 15th August. So 15th August 1945, Japan finally announced to surrender in Second World War, though it took another 15 days to sign the formal document of surrender. So war finally ended on 4th September 1945, though the final announcement of ceasefire was made on 15th August 1945. Alright, so this is Hiroshima Day. Alright, next 3 days that we are going to look at are the days connected to Indian freedom struggle. So 7th August, 8th August and 15th August. These are the 3 days connected with the freedom struggle of India. Alright, out of which 15th August all of us know about, so I'll not elaborate on that. The 2 other days, 7th August and 8th August, in 2 different years, these were the days on which 2 major national movements were launched. Alright, so on 7th August 1905, 7th August 1905, Swadeshi movement was launched. Probably you recall from your history classes from school that Swadeshi movement of 1905 was actually launched as a protest movement against the partition of Bengal caused by Lord Curzon. So this movement was launched against Lord Curzon's mindless partition of Bengal on religious basis, right? So the nationalist leader, they launched a Swadeshi movement, and one of the prime motive of this Swadeshi movement was promotion of indigenous goods. Alright, so the handloom here means khadi, which is India's own indigenous good. So in the honor of, or in the memory of launching of Swadeshi movement on 7th August 1905 in Calcutta, nowadays we celebrate National Handloom Day on the same date. Correct. And about 8th August, so on 8th August 1942, 8th August 1942, the last major national level movement of India, which is Quit India movement, also known as August Kranti, was launched from Bombay. So Mahatma Gandhi was one of the main leaders of Quit India movement, and it was during this movement that Gandhiji gave the slogan of do or die, which in Hindi translates into Karo ya Maro. This was the final push which led to British exit from India. Alright, so 7th August 1905 Swadeshi movement, 8th August 1942 Quit India movement. We nowadays celebrate both these days One is National Handloom Day and another is the anniversary of Quit India movement. And then obviously 15th August 1947 is the day on which India attained its independence finally. So August has always been a month which is very significant, very crucial for India's freedom struggle. All right. So after these 3 days, these 3 days, next day is 26th August or Women's Equality Day. Now this is an important day in the feminist movements of the world, because on this date in 1920, women in USA finally got the right to vote. This was accomplished through 19th Amendment to the US Constitution. So 19th Amendment of US Constitution finally granted the right to vote to the women in USA. So before that only males were able to vote in US elections. All right. So in the memory of passage of 19th Amendment in US Constitution in 1920, now we celebrate 26th August as Women's Equality Day. Now this is a point to ponder here, that it took USA almost 1.5 centuries, because you know that USA became independent in 1776. So electioneering started, the system of election in USA started in 1776, but women could vote only in 1920. So that's almost 170 years. So it took USA 170 years to grant voting rights to women. On the other hand, India granted all the women above a certain age right to vote from the day one, which means on the day when males got the right to vote in India, females also got the right to vote, right? So that is one of the greatness of our constitution makers, that they were very gender neutral, they were very gender equal right from the beginning. So 1951 was the first elections in India, and even in the first elections women were allowed to vote. All right. So 26 August, Women's Equality Day. Now the last day of this month is National Sports Day. National Sports Day, which is announced, which is celebrated, which is marked on 29th August, is the birth anniversary of the legendary hockey player from India, Major Dhyan Chand. All right. And the next category of news that we are going to look at in the month of August is also connected to National Sports Day, because on this date, which is 29th August or the birth anniversary of Major Dhyan Chand, on this date we announce our National Sports Awards. So next category is awards and recognition, and one major award announced this month is National Sports Award. Alright, as I already told you, National Sports Awards are presented on 29th August, and generally the award presentation ceremony is conducted in Rashtrapati Bhavan. But because of the coronavirus situation this year's ceremony was held virtually. So President of India, Shri Ramnath Kovind ji, conferred the national awards in online manner. So he conferred the award from Rashtrapati Bhavan, while the winners, they accepted those awards virtually from different SAI centers, Sports Authority of India centers across the country. So they accepted the award in an online manner. Another change in this year's award was that in this year's award, prize money has been significantly increased. So the prize money for a sports award was last reviewed in 2008. So there has been no revision in prize money of these awards for almost more than a decade. That is why in this year's award, prize money for the Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award and Arjuna Award, which are the two major awards of India, the prize money has been increased by almost threefold. So prize money for Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award, which is also the highest sports award in India, has been increased to 25 lakh rupees from the previous amount of 7.5 lakh rupees. So from 7.5 lakh, 7.5 lakh to 25 lakh is the prize money of Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award. For Arjuna Award, prize money has been enhanced from 5 lakh rupees to 15 lakh rupees. So Arjuna Award, which is the second highest award in India, will now get a prize money of 15 lakh rupees, whereas Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award, which is the highest sports award in India, the winners will get 25 lakh rupees as the prize money. All right. Okay, so these are the two prominent sports award in India. There are other sports awards also. So, for example, we have a Dronacharya award which is given to coaches. We have a Major Dhyan Chand award which is given as a lifetime achievement for the significant contribution in the field of sports. Then we have a award for best performing sports university in India. We also have an award for best performing PSU which has done significant work for the promotion of sports in India. So there are a lot of sports awards in India, but we are going to look at only the two which are given to the sports persons, not the not the officials, not the coaches, but the sports persons. And I'm reiterating once again, Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award is the highest sports award in India. This is highest sports award, which means it is in rank 1 in the sports in the hierarchy of sports awards, and Arjuna Award is the second highest sports award in India. All right, let us look at the names of the winners in both of these award categories. All right, so in Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award, this year the award is presented to 5 sports persons. This is also a first, because generally Rajiv Gandhi Sports Award, Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award is given to a maximum of 3 people, but this year the award has been given to 5 sports person. And a moment of great joy is that out of these 5, 3 are women sports person. They are women athletes. All right, these are Rani Rampal, who is India's hockey captain, who is the captain of India's women's hockey team. Then we have Vinesh Fogart, the first Indian woman to win gold medal in both Commonwealth Games as well as Asian Games, both of which were held in 2018. She competes in 50 kg category. And last year she also became the first Indian athlete to be nominated for the prestigious Laureus World Sports Award for the Comeback of the Year Award. Laureus Sports Award. Okay, Laureus is a very prestigious sports award. So last year Vinesh Fogart was nominated for Comeback of the Year category. Though she did not win that award, but her nomination itself is an achievement. Comeback of the Year. Because last year she came back out of an injury. Alright, so this is Vinesh Fogart, 50 kg women wrestling. Next is Manika Batra, who is a tennis player. She won gold medal in Commonwealth Games and Asian Games both in 2018. So these are the 3 women sports person who got Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award this year. Then for the male sports person, we have Mariyappan Thangavellu. Mariyappan Thangavellu is a para athlete. He participated in 2016 Rio Paralympics. So Paralympics is a sports competition which is held for Paralympics is a sports competition held for differently abled athletes, and it is held immediately after the Olympics at the same venue. So in 2016 Olympics were held in Rio, and on the same venue after the Olympics were concluded, Paralympics were held. So in 2016 Rio Paralympics, Mariyappan Thangavellu won gold medal in high jump. So he's a high jumper, he's an athlete. Alright, and the 5th winner of Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award this year is our very own Rohit Sharma. Rohit Sharma performed very well in the Cricket World Cup last year. He scored maximum century for a person in a single World Cup, which I think was 5. So Rohit Sharma has a phenomenal performance in Cricket World Cup last year, and because of which he also got Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award. So please remember the names of these 5 sports persons, very very important, because these 5 are the winners of highest sports award in India this year, Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award. Now for Arjuna Awards. Alright guys, so please remember Arjuna Awards are given every year to almost a dozen athletes. Okay? It is almost like one athlete will be given this award from every discipline. So lot of athletes win Arjuna Award every year. So I'm only mentioning the names of the prominent ones. This is not a complete list. Once again, I am telling you, this is not a complete list. This is the names of only the most important or most famous athletes who won Arjuna Awards this year. So first is Duti Chand. Duti Chand, she is the current national champion in 100 meter and 200 meter sprint. So she participates in 100 meter and 200 meters. Current national champion. She also qualified for 100 meters in Rio Olympics 2016. So she participated in Rio Olympics also. But last year Duti Chand was in news because of a different reason. Last year she became the first Indian sports person to openly come out as a member of LGBT community. So last year she revealed her same-sex relationship with a girl. So the first Indian athlete to come out in open about her same-sex relationship, Duti Chand. She comes from Odisha and she is a 100 meter and 200 meter athlete. Please do not confuse her with the Hima Das. Hima Das generally participates in 400 meter and 200 meter. Right? So her Hima Das's major event is 400 meter, Duti Chand's 100 meter. Next athletes are two young pistol shooters from India. One, Manu Bhakar, she is from Haryana, and Saurabh Chaudhary is from Uttar Pradesh. Both of them are in their teenagers. So Manu Bhakar I think is 17 years and Saurabh Chaudhary is 16 years. Young, promising pistol shooters from India. Both of them are the winners of World Championship in 10 meter air pistol in their own categories. In fact, Saurabh Chaudhary is the current world record holder in junior category. Both of them have qualified for 2020 Tokyo Olympics, but unfortunately the Olympics could not be held. So the new date for Olympics is August next year, August 2021. Whenever these Olympics are held, these two sportspersons, Manu Bhakar and Saurabh Chaudhary, are the guys to look out for. They are the bright medal hopes for India in next year's in next year's Olympics, because they are performing exceedingly well in world stage at World Championship. So Manu Bhakar and Saurabh Chaudhary. Another names are Ishant Sharma and Deepti Sharma, cricketers. Deepak Hooda, captain of India's Kabaddi team. So these are some other players who won Arjuna Awards this year. Once again guys, this is not a complete list. I will post a complete list. I will post a PDF of the complete list of Arjuna Awardee winners and also the Dronacharya Awardee winners in your Telegram group. You can check that out. I will share the PDF in your Telegram group. I think you know that the link of the Telegram group is given in the description box. So you can check that link and you can join that link and get the PDF of all the sports award winners this year. In fact, this year along with sports award, adventure awards were also given. So I will post the complete list as a PDF in the Telegram group. Alright guys, so this is about the awards given in this month. Alright, next category is persons in news. People who were in news in the month of August 2020. Okay. Alright, the first name is Kamala Harris. Alright, first name is Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has been nominated as the vice presidential candidate in 2020 US presidential elections. She has been chosen as the running mate by the Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. So she is the vice presidential candidate of Democratic Party and she will take on Mike Pence of Republicans. Alright, so Mike Pence is the vice presidential candidate or the running mate of Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris is the running mate of Joe Biden. Kamala Harris earlier has also filed nomination as the presidential candidate of Democratic Party, but she withdrew from the campaign in December last year after a poor show. So now she is the vice presidential candidate. Kamala Harris was born in California to immigrant parents. So her mother was an Indian Tamilian and her father was a Jamaican. So this makes Harris the first black and first Asian American woman to compete on a major party's presidential ticket in the United States. She has been a senator from California, and before being senator, she has also served as the first African American Attorney General of California. She is a lawyer and she has served as Attorney General of California. Attorney General, by the way, is the chief lawyer of the state of California. Alright, so this is Kamala Harris, the first person of Indian origin to contest vice presidential elections in USA. Very, very important name for this year's exam. Alright. So this year, US presidential elections will be held in November if everything goes as per the plan, because there is the looming danger of elections getting postponed because of coronavirus pandemic. So if that does not happen, Kamala Harris will either win election in November, which will make her a very, very important bit of information for your exams, because your exams will be held sometime in December, January, immediately after the US presidential elections. Alright, so if Kamala Harris wins her vice presidential election, that will become a very important name and a short question in your exam. But in case she does not win, even if she loses, she still remains a very important information, very important current affair, because of her Indian origin. Alright, so either way, please remember the name of Kamala Harris, most definitely. Okay, I would suggest that you please go through and read her Wikipedia page also, and you can also visit her personal website. Idea is to know everything that is to be known for Kamala Harris, because this is an expected question in this year's exam. Alright, next name is Shinzo Abe. Alright, Shinzo Abe is Japanese Prime Minister who has announced his resignation from the post due to his falling health. He is 65-year-old and he is suffering from ulcerative colitis for more than a decade. Ulcerative colitis is an immune disorder affecting the stomach lining. Alright, so his poor health condition has forced him to resign ahead of September 2021, when his term as Prime Minister was due to end. So he was to remain Prime Minister till September 2021, but he is resigning 1 year in advance because of his health condition. He became Prime Minister for the first time. He became Prime Minister in 2006, but even then he had to resign after 1 year over poor health. So he became Prime Minister for the first time in 2006 and then resigned in 2007. 2006 to 7 was the first time when he became Prime Minister, but then he resigned due to ill health. Then once again he became Prime Minister in 2012, and now he's resigning in 2020. So in this term he has served for almost 8 years, which makes him the longest serving Prime Minister of Japan. Resignation of Shinzo Abe is a blow to Japan, but it will also impact India-Japan relationship. It will also have a bearing on India-Japan-USA relationship, and also the combined effort of these three countries against China in Asia, because Shinzo Abe, just like Donald Trump and Narendra Modi, is considered as a strong man in his country and a conservative. So his absence will be felt not just in Japan but in India, in USA and in Asia Pacific as a whole. So Shinzo Abe, his replacement will be decided by his party in an internal election. So I think that is going to take another 2 months before someone could replace Shinzo Abe as the next Prime Minister of Japan. So till the time his party finds out his replacement, Shinzo Abe is going to stay as the Prime Minister. Alright. Okay, so next person who made news is Girish Chandra Murmu. Alright guys, this is another important name for your exam. Girish Chandra Murmu. There is likelihood of this question coming into your exam. The likelihood of this question coming into your exam is more than 90%. Alright, so remember this. Girish Chandra Murmu is a former IAS officer. He is a 1985 Gujarat cadre IAS officer, and in October 2019 he was appointed as the first Lieutenant Governor of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. I think I don't need to tell you, I don't need to remind you that how in August last year, Jammu and Kashmir had been disintegrated into two separate Union Territories. One is Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and another is the Union Territory of Ladakh. Alright, so announcement of this disintegration was made in August, but that announcement was implemented on 31st October 2019. 31st October was chosen because this is the birth date of Sardar Patel, which means the two union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh came into existence on this date. And on this date, two lieutenant governors were appointed, one for Jammu and Kashmir, another for Ladakh. So right now we are talking about the Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Girish Chandra Murmu. So in October last year he was appointed as the Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, but then almost 10 months later, in August this year, he had resigned from that post because he has been appointed to another post, another major post, this time at union level. So he has been appointed as the new CAG of India, new Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Now, who is Comptroller and Auditor General? What are his functions? We are going to look at CAG in detail in our lecture on Indian Constitution. Right now, all I want to tell you is that CAG is an auditor for the government of India. So he checks the accounts, he audits the accounts of both union government as well as state governments and also all the PSUs, which means he is an auditor of the government, both central government as well as state government, which makes him a very, very powerful position, CAG. Alright, so Girish Chandra Murmu is the new CAG of India. Alright, now along with Girish Chandra Murmu as the new CAG, I want you to remember two more names. So one is Manoj Sinha, who has replaced Girish Chandra Murmu, as the new Lieutenant Governor of J&K. Alright, so Manoj Sinha is now the new Lieutenant Governor of J&K. Manoj Sinha is a BJP MP from Ghazipur in UP and now the Lieutenant Governor of J&K. And another name that I want you to remember is R.K. Mathur or Radhakrishna Mathur. Radhakrishna Mathur is also a former IAS officer, and when Girish Chandra Murmu was appointed as the Lieutenant Governor of J&K, at that time R.K. Mathur was appointed as the Lieutenant Governor of Ladakh. So while Murmu has resigned, R.K. Mathur is still on his post. So he is the current Lieutenant Governor of Ladakh. Alright. Alongside, I want you to remember a fourth name also. This name is Rajiv Maharshi. So Rajiv Maharshi is the outgoing CAG of India. Rajiv Maharshi is also an IAS officer, I think of Rajasthan cadre. So he is outgoing CAG. Okay. So to summarize all the four names once again, Murmu has replaced Rajiv Maharshi, Sinha has replaced Murmu. Okay. So Sinha has replaced Murmu as the new Lieutenant Governor of J&K, while Murmu has replaced Rajiv Maharshi as the new CAG of India. Okay. And the fourth name is R.K. Mathur, who is the Lieutenant Governor of Ladakh. I hope you are not confused, and I hope in case of any confusion you will pause this video here and rewind it and listen to it again. In case of any confusion, you can always drop a message in Telegram group. So I will be available on that group to answer your questions, answer your doubts. So please feel free to put in all of your doubts. Alright, so this is about Girish Chandra Murmu and few other names connected to him. Let me go to next name. let me look at the next name. Next name in this list is appointed as the new MD and CEO of HDFC Bank. He will be replacing Aditya Puri. Aditya Puri. He will be replacing as Aditya Puri in October this year. So I think he will take charge on October 27th, if I remember correctly. So in October 2020, Aditya Puri will be replaced as the CEO of HDFC Bank. Alright. So RBI has approved Shashidhar Jagdishan as the new MD and CEO of HDFC Bank. Another important bit of information for this year's exam. So guys, please make it sure that you remember both of these names which are flashing on your screens right now. Girish Chandra Murmu as the new CAG, Shashidhar Jagdishan as the new CEO of HDFC Bank. Girish Chandra Murmu has replaced Rajiv Maharshi. Jagdishan will replace Aditya Puri. And at this point, you must also know that HDFC Bank is the largest private sector bank of India. Alright, so Shashidhar Jagdishan will be the CEO of largest private sector bank of India, which is HDFC Bank. Alright. Okay, so let us check if there are any more names in this month. Alright, okay, so next we are going to look at the names of some of the people who died this month. August has been a very, very harsh month when it comes to the death of eminent people. We have Pranab Mukherjee, we had Rahat Indori, we had Chetan Chauhan, all three of which died because of coronavirus. Alright, so I think you guys know that coronavirus is taking dangerous proportions in India, and as I'm speaking, the number of fresh cases in India yesterday were highest in the world, which was 95,000 new cases every single day. Alright, so coronavirus is taking its toll in India. Right now we are looking at some of the people who died this month. Some of them died because of coronavirus. So these are the prominent people who died this month. Pranab Mukherjee, Rahat Indori and Chetan Chauhan, all three of them were tested positive for coronavirus. Alright, so let me tell you briefly about all of these people. What were their achievements, which field were they associated with, so that it becomes easier for you to remember them. It becomes easier for you to answer any questions related to them asked in your examinations. Alright, so about Pranab Mukherjee. Pranab Mukherjee is the former President of India. So he was the 13th President of India. Right before Shri Ramnath Kovind, he was the President of India. So he served from 2012. He was appointed during UPA period, and he served during both UPA as well as NDA period because he retired in 2017. Right, and then he declined to contest the presidential elections again because of his advanced age. So he served for one term as the 13th President of India from 2012 to 2017. He was a senior Congress leader, and before becoming the President of India, he has also served as the Union Minister of Finance. So he was the Finance Minister from 2009 to 2012, which means right before becoming the President of India, he was the Finance Minister of India. Correct? He had also served as the Foreign Minister of India and also the Defense Minister of India. Alright. So he had held lot of major posts in India. Defense Minister, Foreign Minister, Finance Minister, and then President of India. He missed becoming Prime Minister of India twice. Right? Once after Indira Gandhi was assassinated in 1984, and second time when first time Rajiv Gandhi was preferred over him in 1984, and second time Dr. Manmohan Singh was made the Prime Minister in 2004. Alright, so he missed becoming Prime Minister of India narrowly twice, but other than that he held very, very important positions in cabinet and also the highest position in India, which is the President of India, Pranab Mukherjee. Alright, next name in this list is Pandit Jasraj. Those of you who are interested in classical music, They must definitely have heard this name Pandit Jasraj because he was one of the legends. He was one of the legends of Hindustani classical music. He was a vocalist, a singer, one of the most prominent performers, as well as one of the most respected gurus. Alright. He passed away in New Jersey, USA. He was 90 years of age, and he was also okay, no, he was not tested positive for corona. I mean, not sure. So, Pandit Jasraj, let me tell you briefly about his life. So, Pandit Jasraj was born in Hisar. Pandit Jasraj was born in Hisar. Hisar is a place in Haryana. So, he was born in Haryana, and at a very young age, he shifted to Hyderabad. So, he shifted to Hyderabad because his father, who was also a musician, his father, Pandit Moti Ramji, was appointed as the court poet of Mir Usman Khan, the last Nizam of Hyderabad. So his father was appointed to the court of last Nizam of Hyderabad, and this is why the whole family shifted to Hyderabad. Alright, and then Pandit Jasraj learnt his music in Hyderabad and performed his music in Sanand in Gujarat because Maharaja Jaivant Singh Waghela of Sanand. Maharaja Jaivant Singh Waghela of Sanand, he was a great fan and a great admirer of music, art and culture, and he used to invite Pandit Jasraj for performances. So these are the three cities in which Pandit Jasraj had his initial training: Hisar, Hyderabad, and Sanand. Sanand is a town situated near Ahmedabad. So, okay, and before becoming a stage performer, before becoming a vocalist, Pandit Jasraj has worked as a performing artist on All India Radio in Kolkata. So Kolkata is another city where he has spent a major portion of his life. So 4 cities: Hisar, Hyderabad, Sanand, and Kolkata. Alright, then one piece of information which could be important about Pandit Jasraj, in fact 2 pieces of information which could be important about Pandit Jasraj for this year's exam. One is he belonged to Mewat Gharana. He belonged to Mewat Gharana. Do you understand what is Gharana? Have you heard this word before? Mewat Gharana. So Gharana is basically an organization. Gharana is basically a group of musicians and dancers with a common lineage or a common guru. So this is basically a tradition in Guru Shishya Parampara. So each Gharana is started by a specific guru, and then it follows a specific music style, right? So that's called a Gharana. So some of the famous Gharanas are like Gwalior Gharana, Agra Gharana, Jaipur Gharana, Delhi Gharana, Patiala Gharana, Indore Gharana. Similarly, we have a Mewati Gharana or Mewat Gharana. Mewat is a region in Haryana. It's a region in Haryana. So Mewat Gharana is a Gharana or is a school of music known for its Khayal. Khayal is a specific genre of Indian classical music. Okay, let us not get into that because that will become too much for you to digest. So you just understand that Pandit Jasraj belonged to Mewat Gharana. Alright, this is one information which is important. And second information is that last year in 2019, Pandit Jasraj became the first Indian artist or first Indian musician who had an asteroid named after him. Asteroid. Alright, so International Astronomical Union named an asteroid as Pandit Jasraj. So he has an asteroid dedicated to him. So the first Indian, and in fact the only Indian musician so far to have an asteroid named after him. Alright, so I hope you remember from your science classes that asteroids are celestial bodies which are found between Mars and Jupiter. Okay? More about this if I take your general science classes. Otherwise, you just remember that Pandit Jasraj is the name of an asteroid also. Alright, next name in this list is Rahat Indori. Rahat Indori was a very famous and very popular Urdu poet. He was also a teacher. He used to teach Urdu in Indore, in Madhya Pradesh, and he also used to write lyrics or songs for Bollywood movies. So Rahat Indori, who died at an age of 70 years, was a famous Urdu poet and a famous lyricist. ठीक है, he was admitted to hospital because he was tested positive for corona, and he has worked in many Bollywood movies like Munna Bhai MBBS, Mission Kashmir, and so on. Last year, a line from his poem became a meme material line, which is "बुलाती है मगर जाने का नहीं." That's one of the lines from his poem, Rahat Indori. All right, so you remember that Rahat Indori was a poet. Next name is Chetan Chauhan. Chetan Chauhan is a former cricketer and was a minister in Uttar Pradesh government. Chetan Chauhan also died because of coronavirus. In fact, Chetan Chauhan is the second minister in Uttar Pradesh to die because of coronavirus in last 2 months. Earlier also, Kamal Rani, who was the technical education minister of UP, she also died because of coronavirus. And now this month, Chetan Chauhan, who is the minister for Sainik welfare, he also died because of coronavirus. So Chetan Chauhan was 73 years of age, and before becoming politician, he was a cricketer. He was an opening partner of Sunil Gavaskar. Scored more than 2000 runs in test matches, and a rare, in fact, an interesting record on his name is that he became the first test cricketer to have more than 2000 runs without scoring a single century. ठीक है? In fact, the only other cricketer with a similar record is Shane Warne. Shane Warne has also scored, I think, 3000 runs, but Shane Warne has also never scored a century. So Chetan Chauhan was a former cricketer and a current BJP politician, a minister in UP. He died because of coronavirus. So I cannot stress the importance of protecting yourself against coronavirus enough, because you can see that even ministers are vulnerable. Even ministers are not safe. Ministers which get the best of medical treatment, even they are not safe from coronavirus. So I would urge all of you to take precautions, stay indoor as much as possible till the time government tells you to step out, till the time government relaxes the restrictions. Please stay indoor, and please use online method to perform most of your activities, including learning and education. All right, last name in this list is Chadwick Boseman. Chadwick Boseman, the Hollywood star known for his work in Black Panther, he also died this month. And unfortunately, Chadwick Boseman died very young. He was only 43 years of age. He was suffering from cancer, so he died because of cancer. All right. I think all of you know that he has played parts in superhero Marvel movies, including Captain America Civil War, Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, and Black Panther. So Chadwick Boseman, one of the most loved superheroes, is no more. Alright, so these are the important people in this month. Now let us look at important places in this month. So next category is places in news. Alright, so we are going to look at 3 places which were in news in this month. First is Beirut. So one place is an international place, and the rest 2 places are Indian. So Beirut, which is the capital of Middle Eastern country Lebanon, was in news because of a massive explosion which took place on 4th of August. Beirut is the capital, and capital city of Lebanon was This explosion was so massive that it not only killed 160 people and injured 6,000 more. In fact, it devastated almost half of the city. Almost half of the city is gone. Explosion is believed to have been carried out by 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate, which was stored at a warehouse near Beirut's port in unsafe conditions. So, according to initial investigations, uh, this 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 load of ammonium nitrate caught fire because of a firecracker. All right, and then it led to an explosion. There was huge public outrage in the country, and following that public anger, the Prime Minister of Lebanon, Hassan Diab, and his entire cabinet had to resign. So Lebanon has got a new Prime Minister in Mustafa Adib. Mustafa Adib is the former Lebanese ambassador to Germany. All right, so Germany and European Union is watching the development very closely. In fact, Mustafa Adib is believed to believed to have a soft corner for Germany and European Union. So let us. It remains to be seen in future how political condition in Beirut unfolds in future. All right. So this is Beirut. Next are the two cities in India. One is Indore. So Indore has retained its top rank, its first position for the fourth consecutive year as the cleanest city of India. It's the cleanest city of India. Alright, so every year a cleanliness survey is conducted under the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. This survey is called Cleanliness Survekshan or Swachh Survekshan. So, in this Swachh Survekshan, Indore was adjudged as the cleanest Indian city for the fourth time in a row. Indore is followed by Surat as the second cleanest city and Navi Mumbai as the third cleanest city in India. Along with that, please remember that Jalandhar is the cleanest cantonment town in India, and Banaras or Varanasi was named as the cleanest town on the banks of River Ganga. Alright, so remember Indore, remember Surat, Navi Mumbai, Jalandhar, and Varanasi. Okay, so third place in news this month was Ayodhya. Ayodhya was in news because Ram Mandir Bhumi Pujan ceremony took place in Ayodhya on 5th of August. A lot of eminent personalities, including Prime Minister of India, attended this ceremony, and Prime Minister was joined by Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi Adityanath, Governor of Uttar Pradesh, Anandiben Patel, Chief of RSS, Mohanji Bhagwat, and Chief of Shri Ram Janmabhoomi Tirth Kshetra, Mahant Nritya Gopal Das. These were the other prominent personalities which shared the space, which shared the stage with Prime Minister. The ceremony was deliberately kept a low-key affair because of the rising coronavirus cases. So it was decided not to collect a huge crowd at the venue, and this is why only the selected people were given invitations. Alright, so with Bhumi Pujan ceremony, temple construction has finally begun, and it is expected that temple construction will be completed in next 2 years. So this is Ram Janmabhoomi temple in Ayodhya. Alright, so these were the places in news. Next category is national news. Alright guys, so next important category of news that we are going to look at is national news. So in national news, first news is about the growing deteriorating COVID-19 situation in India. Alright, so in the month of August, India set a world record for the world's highest single day increase in fresh cases of coronavirus. Number of daily coronavirus cases in India has breached 90,000. Right? So India became the first country in the world to cross 90,000 mark in a single day case rise since the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. India has surpassed even the United States as the worst affected nation so far. While the number of fresh cases and fatalities had reduced a bit in past few weeks, however, in the last week of August, we saw an unprecedented rise in the number doubled in comparison to the preceding weeks. India's total coronavirus tally has also crossed 40 lakh, and total number of deaths in India due to coronavirus is approximately 70,000 and counting. India's alarming rise in cases comes as the government announced unlock 4.0 guidelines, under which almost all restrictions were lifted. Idea is to boost India's economy and get the country back to its original working manner. So September onwards or October onwards, when all the economic activities in India will be allowed, number of corona cases are expected to rise even further. Alright, so this is COVID situation in India. Next is a positive development. Government has announced the creation of a national recruitment agency. So Union Cabinet has approved setting up of national recruitment agency to conduct the common eligibility test for different recruitment examinations. Alright, in the beginning, in the first year, government is making exams of 3 agencies common, and these 3 agencies are SSC, Railway and Banks. So these 3 will have a common exam, and in the coming time, in the future, this common eligibility test will be applicable for all the recruitment agencies. Alright. See, idea behind creating such a national recruitment agency and a common eligibility test is to eliminate multiple tests and to save the time and resources of the test takers. The merit list of this common entrance test will remain valid for 3 years, during which the candidate can apply for jobs in different sectors depending upon his aptitude and his preferences. Various public sector undertakings, various government departments, and in the future different private companies also will use the score in this common entrance test to shortlist candidate for the second stage. So this is a welcome step because it will National Recruitment Agency will have one examination center in every district of India, so that students or the test takers do not have to travel to different cities or do not have to travel for 400-500 kilometers just to write a test. Alright, so this is National Recruitment Agency, which has been approved by the government. Another very positive government scheme is UDAN. So UDAN scheme, UDAN, which is a short term for उड़े देश का आम नागरिक, उड़े देश का आम नागरिक. तो आपको नाम से so you guys would be able to understand that this is a scheme connected to air travel. उड़े देश का आम नागरिक is a regional connectivity scheme launched by Government of India in 2010 to increase or to facilitate air connectivity and to make air travel affordable and feasible for the common public. Alright, so scheme was launched in 2010. In this month or in August 2020, fourth phase of the scheme or UDAN 4.0 has started. Alright, so far in 3 phases, more than 700 routes have been sanctioned, and in this specific phase, in the fourth phase of UDAN scheme, 78 new routes has been approved, and these 78 new routes in UDAN 4 has Northeast region as one of the priorities. So priority has been given to Northeast region and priority has been given to other Himalayan states of India. This is in line with the Act East policy of India. So India has a foreign policy or a diplomatic policy called as Act East policy. This is a policy started by former Prime Minister of India I.K. Gujral, Indra Kumar Gujral, and strengthened by the current Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. So this is called Act East policy. So according to this policy, India will boost infrastructure development and connectivity in the northeastern part of India. Idea is to use northeast to get a better connectivity and a better relationship with the ASEAN countries which lie further to the east of northeastern region. So countries which lie across Bay of Bengal in ASEAN region, countries like Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, etc. So India wants to have a better relationship with those countries, and in that strategy, northeast region can act as a bridge. So that's known as Act East policy. So in line with this policy, the current phase of Udan 4.0 prioritize northeastern regions. So many underserved and unserved areas in northeast will get air connectivity under Udan 4.0. Okay, so three things that you must remember about Udan scheme. One is the full form. Second is the area with which this scheme is connected, and third thing is that scheme is implemented by Civil Aviation Ministry. So this scheme is implemented by Civil Aviation Ministry. All right, and do you know who is the Civil Aviation Minister of India at present? If you do not know, please find out his name, because these are the kind of questions generally asked in examination. So the name of ministers or the name of important dignitaries. Civil Aviation Minister of India right now is Sardar Hardeep Singh Puri, a former IAS officer and the current Civil Aviation Minister of India. Alright, so this is about Udan scheme. Okay, let us look at few more national news. Alright, okay, let us look at another government scheme, another government program known as Kiran. This program is specifically launched by government in this time of coronavirus, because I'm sure you must have noticed increasing number of mental health issues in last couple of months. So obviously lockdown is one of the contributing factors, because lockdown is taking its toll on mental health of people. People are unable to go out to work, people are unable to go out for recreation, and this is causing a lot of stress. This is why you must have heard about many high profile suicide cases in last couple of months, right? So acknowledging the need to address the mental health issues, what government has done, government has started a new mental health helpline. The name of this helpline is Kiran. So this is the toll-free number of this helpline. Alright, so Kiran helpline service, it targets to resolve the mental health issues faced by the people across the country, especially in the present times of lockdown. Aim is to provide first aid, aim is to provide support for early screening, aim is to provide psychological support, aim is to promote mental well-being and psychological crisis management. Alright, so the scheme is launched by Ministry of Social Justice and Environment. Scheme is run by Ministry of Social Justice. Just the way I told you during Udan that you need to remember the name of concerned minister, similarly please find out the name of Minister of Social Justice in India. Udan के केस में, in case of Udan, I have already told you the name of Civil Aviation Minister, but in this case I am giving you this as a task. Go and find out the name of Social Justice Minister of India. His ministry is in charge of this toll-free mental health helpline called Kiran. Alright, so this much is sufficient about Kiran. One more piece of news that we are going to look at, another of the scheme or another of the program launched by government, another welcome step by government is running of the first Kisan Rail. The first Kisan Rail was launched on 7th August. I told you why was 7th August chosen. I told you the significance of 7th August on in the category of days and dates. This is the anniversary of Swadeshi movement. So on this movement, on this date, first Kisan Rail was inaugurated. All right. So the first Kisan Rail will start from Nasik in Maharashtra towards Patna in Bihar. All right. So the first train will be between Maharashtra and Bihar. Nasik has been chosen because Nasik and surrounding areas produces huge quantity of fruits, fresh vegetables, onions, flowers and other perishable goods. So idea is to connect the center of production and the center of consumption. Alright. In later stages, multiple such trains will also operate from different centers of production in different consumer markets. Alright. So three things that you need to remember. About Kisan Rail. First thing is Kisan Rail. The first Kisan Rail will operate between which two states? This is the first thing that you need to remember. Second thing that you need to remember is the name of ministry. Name of the ministry which will operate this Kisan Rail. So please remember the Kisan Rail will be operated not by Ministry of Railways but by Ministry of Agriculture. It will be operated by Agriculture Ministry. I mean, Agriculture Ministry will be the nodal agency. It will still be operated by Indian Railways, but it will be managed by Agriculture Ministry. And third thing that you must remember is the name of Agriculture Minister of India. Name of Agriculture Minister of India. Alright, so this is about Kisan Rail, and along with Kisan Rail, this is about national news, important national news in this month. Now very quickly let us look at few international news. So before winding up, let us look at few international news which took place in this month. Alright. Okay. So next category, which is going to be the last category of news, is international news. So in international news, I think we are going to look at three major news which took place this month. Two of which are connected with Pakistan, and one does not have the presence of Pakistan, but one has the presence of Middle East. So one important news is Israel and United Arab Emirates signing a historic peace agreement. Alright. Okay. So on 13th of August, Israel and UAE, they announced a historic peace deal. This deal was mediated by US President Donald Trump, and the deal was signed by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel and the Crown Prince of UAE, Sheikh Mahmoud bin Zayed. So he is the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. Alright, which means you must remember the names of 4 people connected with this deal. Must remember the names of 4 people connected with this deal. So first is Donald Trump, second is Benjamin Netanyahu, third is Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, and fourth is Mahmoud Abbas. Alright, so Trump is from USA, Netanyahu is from Israel, Mohammed bin Zayed is from UAE, and Mahmoud Abbas is from Palestine. Okay? Easy way to remember is the deal is signed between these two. Deal is mediated by USA and deal is about Palestine. Deal is about Palestine. Alright? Because if you look at second last point, so according to this deal, Israel will suspend its aggressive accession policies against Palestine. Alright. Right now is not the correct time to tell you about the Israel-Palestine conflict, which is one of the most complicated issues, one of the most complicated and thorny international issue in the Middle East. You can You can read about that on Wikipedia, Israel-Palestine conflict. Let me just tell you that this is a conflict which is a great and very disturbing conflict going on in the Middle East since 1948, and because of which lot of bloodshed had taken place in that area. So Israel UAE peace deal is one of the step towards solving or one of the steps towards bringing peace in Middle Eastern region. All right. So one of the two major provisions of this deal is Israel will stop its aggression against Palestine, and in return, UAE, which is a prominent Arab country, will recognize Israel as a country, and it will restore all the diplomatic relations with Israel. So right now, Israel is not considered as a country. Israel is not recognized as a country by majority of the Arab countries. The only three countries which recognizes Israel as a country in Arab world, there are only three countries which recognizes Israel as a separate country. Okay? Obviously, I'm talking about Arab world. So one country is Egypt. So first country is Egypt, second country is Jordan, and third country now will be UAE. So after this deal, even UAE will recognize Israel as a separate, independent, sovereign country. Other Arabian countries still do not recognize Israel as a country, and this has got to do with Israel-Palestine conflict, which I am not explaining right now. You can check about that conflict on Wikipedia or on YouTube. In case you do not understand anything, you can post your queries, post your doubts in Telegram group. Alright, so about Israel UAE peace deal, once again let me revise everything which is important for you to remember. The important points that you must remember are the names of 4 countries involved, names of 4 people involved, and the 2 major provisions of this deal. By 2 major provisions I mean second last point and the third last point. Okay? So deal was announced on 13th of August. I think second announcement regarding this deal will be made on 15th of September. So check the newspapers of that date, news channels on 15th of September, because new development will take place on that date. Alright, so this is about Israel UAE peace agreement. Alright, this is about Israel UAE peace agreement. Second international news this month is Saudi Arabia-Pakistan conflict. Saudi Arabia-Pakistan conflict. The two very close allies are now on the brink of having their relationship being broken. So what Saudi Arab has done, Saudis have ended their loan and oil supply to Pakistan. This is a huge blow to Pakistan because Pakistan was promised a 6.2 billion relief package by Saudi Arabia in 2018, and this package was very crucial. This package is very crucial for Pakistan to come out of the economic mess that the country is in right now. Right? Correct. So Saudi Arabia has promised to help Pakistan out of that economic crisis by paying $6.2 billion, and out of which $1 billion have already been paid to Pakistan, but now Saudis have asked Pakistan to return that money. Pakistan has been asked to pay back the $1 billion paid by Saudi Arabia. Alright. Now such a strong Saudi response is in response to this was because of a warning. This is because of a warning issued by Pakistan's foreign minister. Now, okay, let me open it up slightly. This Saudi-Pakistan conflict has its root in Kashmir. So, during Girish Chandra Murmu topic, I told you that in August last year, India revoked special status of Kashmir by abolishing Article 370 of India's constitution. Correct. So Pakistan is against that move, and Pakistan is trying to generate the support of all the Islamic countries against that move by India. So Pakistan is trying to gather all the Islamic countries to take an anti-India stand on Kashmir issue. And Organization of Islamic Countries, which is a group of 57 Islamic countries. It's a group of 57 countries, and this group is the voice of Islamic world. This group is the voice of Muslim world. Alright, so Pakistan is continuously pushing OIC to pass an anti-India resolution, to pass a pro-Kashmiri and anti-India resolution. So what OIC has done, OIC has passed a Kashmir resolution. OIC has already passed a resolution supporting the rights of Kashmiri people. But OIC is continuously declining to pass an anti-India resolution. OIC is not taking an anti-India stance. Alright, this has upset the equations of Pakistan. And because OIC headquarters is in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, OIC headquarters in Saudi Arabia, and OIC is led by Saudi Arabia. So because OIC is not taking an anti-India stand, Pakistan is condemning both OIC as well as Saudi Arabia for not doing enough to protect the interest of Kashmiri Muslims. Alright, so last month the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, he issued a warning to Saudi Arabia that if Saudi Arabia and OIC does not take an anti-India stand, then Pakistan will try to create a separate group of Islamic countries with the help of Turkey and Myanmar. So Saudi took it as challenge. Saudi took it as a challenge to their authority of the Muslim world. Alright, and this is why Saudi took such a drastic step against Pakistan, that they have stopped their oil supply, they have stopped funding their CPEC, and they have also asked them to return the already given loan money. So this means that Pakistan is in trouble now. Alright, next bit of news, which is also the last news for today, is also about Pakistan. Alright, so this is about Pakistan releasing a new political map of its country. So Pakistan has released a new political map of the country on 4th of August. Now remember this date. Pakistan released the map on 4th of August 2020, which is just one day before the anniversary of India revoking Article 370, which means under this political map, or under this step taken by Pakistan, is also behind Pakistan taking this step is also the issue of Kashmir. Alright, so Pakistan released a new map of Pakistan because last year on 5th of August last year in I think November, India released a new map of India. So because India released a new map and this is why India released a new map, and in that new map POK was shown as a part of India, both POK as well as Aksai Chin. So I hope you know what is POK and what is Aksai Chin. So POK is the Pakistani held part of Kashmir, and Aksai Chin is the Chinese held part of Ladakh. So while India released its new map last year, both of these parts were shown as India. In response to that, Pakistan this year has released a new map of Pakistan, and Pakistan has shown these to be a part of Pakistan. Alright, now you know that Jammu and Kashmir was always claimed by Pakistan, right? Siachen was also claimed by Pakistan, but going one step forward, now Pakistan is also claiming Ladakh and parts of Gujarat. Pakistan is claiming Junagadh, Sar Creek and Manvadar. Alright, India rightfully rejected this Pakistani map as a political absurdity, as a political stupidity, and nobody is taking this seriously also. But one point which is a cause of concern for India is that along with Pakistan, Nepal has also released a new map of Nepal in the month of July, and Nepal has also claimed 3 Indian territories to be of Nepal. Just the way Pakistan is claiming Indian territories, Nepal is also claiming Kala Pani, Lipu Lake, and Limpiadhura, which are the 3 territories in Indian state of Uttarakhand. Indian state of Uttarakhand. In fact, Pithoragarh district of Uttarakhand. So Nepal is claiming that these 3 are the part of Nepal. Alright. So Pakistan releasing a new map, Nepal releasing a new map, and China continuously raising the stakes on the line of actual control. Alright, so this all seems like the part of a well thought out strategy to contain India, to confine India with the use of India's neighbors by China. So this all looks like a part of China's strategy to counter India using India's 2 volatile neighbors, Pakistan and Nepal. Alright, so these are the 3 major international news this month. So guys, I have given you a taste of how we shall conduct current affairs lecture, what are the types of news that we shall cover in these lectures, and what is the depth up to which we will cover these areas. So we will cover more, we will conduct more such current affairs lectures for different months. So right now in this particular lecture I went month wise. So I pick up August and then looked at different news in the month of August. Alright, so today's lecture was like a primer. Today's lecture was like the first lecture. It was like the basics. This is like an introduction to our pedagogy. This is I hope this lecture was of some help to you. So with this, we have come to the end of this lecture. I want to conclude this lecture here by once again cautioning you to keep yourself, your family members, your loved ones safe and protected from coronavirus. Stay indoor as much as possible. Follow all the government regulations and norms. Do not let lockdown affect your preparation. Go online. Use different medias to further your preparations. Endeavor is committed to help you in your preparation for CAT and other examinations. We will do whatever is possible to help you. Alright, so with these words, let me take your leave. I will end this lecture now. Bye bye. See you in the next lecture. Take care, everyone.